Everyone, welcome to the future. The year is 2020. We have arrived in the future. And I will tell you about what games are going to be coming out. Well, not coming out. What's going to be happening in the games industry in the not-so-distant future. So I myself am a game developer by trade. During the day, I make games. I'm a producer, and I have worked on titles such as Trials of the Blood Dragon, Steep, Trials Rising, and the current game I'm working on is called Second Extinction. Those are some of the games that I've worked on in the past. So my experience is mostly in console, PC, AAA-ish space. So I want to talk about the future of the game industry, kind of trends that I'm seeing now that I think are going to affect what we have going on now in the industry, and affect people playing games and people making games. Let's talk about that stuff. I was at Ubisoft for 4 years, and now I'm at Avalanche Studios. Not to be confused with Avalanche, who are making the Harry Potter game. We are not making the Harry Potter game. It's really confusing, because there is a studio called Avalanche, and then there's us, called Avalanche Studios. Some of the stuff I'm seeing now I want to kind of talk on. So, firstly, I think we are going to be seeing, of course, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo as the main console manufacturers. I don't really see that anyone else would be trying to come into the market unless it's like something insanely unique. But right now, it doesn't really seem like anyone wants to jump into the market because it's such a crowded market with consoles. Like Sony and Microsoft are kind of duking it out, and Nintendo is doing their own thing and doing it like when Nintendo does things really well, they do it really, really well. And then when they do it poorly, they do it really poorly. Like all of their online stuff, like Nintendo's online stuff is always like, what are they doing? What? Like Super Mario 3D All-Stars is available for a limited time, physically and digitally, which is one like, what are they doing? What? Why? Why is it available physically and digital? Physically, I can understand. They would print like a small batch, sure. But digitally? Huh? Why? But then, the Switch as a console is fucking phenomenal. And the games on it, first-party stuff, are really, really good. Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, like the Mario Kart is a re-release, but still, like, the games on it are really, really good. And that shows, like, when Nintendo does things right, it's really right. But yeah, I think when it comes to Sony and Microsoft, I think Sony is going to have a much stronger start into this console cycle because the PS4 has sold really, really well and has outsold Xbox One roughly 2-1, if I recall. And Sony has an amazing lineup of first-party games that Microsoft is sorely missing at the moment. And the first year of the PS5 is already looking really strong with Demon's Souls, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Ratchet and Clank, Deathloop, like a bunch of games that are coming out either timed exclusive or full exclusive for PlayStation 5 within the first year of launch, which is a very strong first year for Sony. But yeah, Nintendo has free reign on family-friendly things, while Sony and Microsoft complete in who's more cool in the eyes of the teen and young adult dudes. Yes, I think Nintendo has that like more family market, but also the kind of, I wouldn't be surprised. This is full-on speculation, but I would not be surprised if Nintendo had a notably higher base of women playing, looking at their games. Like Animal Crossing, for example, is insanely popular and has sold so well. And I think that game and other Nintendo games have a larger base of women playing it compared to Sony and Microsoft. This is just my guess, my hunch, but I would guess. And I think that's also a reason why Nintendo has been big with the Switch, because they have been able to cater more to women. Yes. Sony has a really strong first year. And now, the price points are also quite good with $400 for the digital version. Not bad. I think they're going to have a really, really strong start. And Microsoft also has a really competitive price point with the $299 for Series S is really cheap. Like, that's very cheap for a new console. And then you have Series X for the more hardcore audience. And hardcore audience will pay more and also play more for their consoles. But I think the problem that Microsoft will have at the start is the lack of first-party titles, so exclusive titles. And that is something that they suffered throughout this generation, and they kind of started changing that late or like mid this console generation with buying a bunch of studios and opening up some new studios, and they've increased that now a lot. I mean, we just saw them buy ZeniMax. Essentially, now they have Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, Dishonored, like all those games are now under Microsoft. Now, Microsoft has said that the current games that have already been signed with Sony, like Deathloop, for example, and Tokyo Ghostwire, those will be honored, which they probably have to because there's a contract in place. So those will probably be the last. Well, not last, but probably they won't do like PS4 or PS5 games often from those franchises. Maybe some, because they did say a case-by-case basis, which I would guess that 95% of the time it will be exclusive to PC and Xbox. So yeah, Microsoft has those coming up. Like, you have Everwild from Rare, you have the new Fable coming out, then you have the big RPG from Obsidian, but those are all in the future, We don't know when those are coming out, and they seem to be still in quite early stages, and all these new studios that they've bought are still starting to get into this first-party development cycle, where Sony has studios that have been in this process for a long, long time, and are now producing stellar titles. So I think within 2 to 5 years, Xbox is going to have some really stellar first-party games, but it's going to take that 2 to 5 years for their current investments to bear their first fruit. And I think then Microsoft is going to be in an extremely powerful position because of the Game Pass. So for those of you who don't know, Microsoft has a service called Xbox Game Pass, in which you pay, I think it's $10 a month or $15 a month for the Ultimate, and you get access to a library of over 100 games. And you can download them and play them for as long as you have the subscription service on yourself. And it is a fantastic service because it's also on PC. The name is very confusing. It's Xbox Game Pass for PC. I hate the name because everyone, when I always talk about, Game Pass is great, they're like, I don't have an Xbox. So it is also on PC, and they always put their big first-party titles like Gears or Halo or whatever. They are on the Xbox Game Pass service on day one. And that is an immensely powerful tool. So think of that, like the Xbox Game Pass, $10 a month, plus the Series S, $300 a month. That is an insanely powerful price point for people who don't have a huge amount of money. Because on Sony's end, you have to get the $400 console, which is $100 more, plus a $70 game, because now it looks like game prices are going to be going up from $60 to $70. So do you pay $310 and then $10 a month, or $470 and another $70 for every consecutive game? I think this is where Microsoft is going to have a big advantage over Sony, but this is going to play out to their advantage in the long run. It's going to take some time, but I think this is where Microsoft has a very, very strong position. Now, Sony is kind of getting into this, yes, as they are now adding PS4 first-party, or not only first-party, sorry, the big PS4 games to PlayStation Plus in a similar way as Game Pass, but they have specifically said that that model doesn't work for their new games, so I don't think we're going to be seeing like the latest games on that PS Plus. I forget what it's called, game collection or something it's called. Maybe like 3 years after it's out, they put it there. Maybe, we don't know, but it doesn't look like they're gonna have the new games there. So I think this is something that Microsoft will have a leg up on Sony. So how do you see the price tag of those services changing in the future? The Xbox Game Pass feels severely underpriced. Huge value for sure. Interesting point. It might change a little bit. I don't see them making a huge bump to the price because they're probably gonna lose customers. But they might do like a small few dollar bump, like Netflix did like a few years ago. They bumped the price from, I think it was $9.99 to $10.99, something like that. But I think now they have $9.99, which is Xbox Game Pass for one platform, either Xbox or PC, and then they have $14.99 for the Ultimate, which is both platforms, and you get access to their streaming service, xCloud, I think. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to raise those prices, at least in the foreseeable future, a lot. Maybe like a few dollars here and there over the years. Yeah, I think that's what I think. But, who knows? Because the value of such a month-based thing for the people who pay for that is that it is cheap on a month-to-month basis. If it becomes hugely expensive, like $20 a month, they're going to lose a lot of the volume of people, because that's the point of the Game Pass. It's supposed to be low barrier of entry, low price, but high volume, and they already have over 15 million subscribers to Game Pass, which is a huge number for them. It's a really, really big number. So I think they need to keep the price low so that they can keep the volume high, because that's the point, I think. Okay, so yeah, I don't see it $20 as a feasible price point. Just wondering how much the developers get out of all of this. So that actually ties into in the Sniffbass question of, do you know how much studios get paid? Is it per download or per month or chunk, or one big chunk? I do not know for sure. I have not seen those contracts. If I had, I couldn't talk about it. So I'm going to be talking speculatively because I have not seen those contracts and I don't know about them. My guess is that it is one lump sum that is paid to the developer. My guess is that for a service like PlayStation Plus, where they give out a game or some games every month, like Fall Guys, for example, or Game Pass, where they have the game in the Game Pass service for a certain amount of time, and then it leaves that service, as has happened with many games. My guess is that they pay a lump sum, so they basically calculate that we expect from Xbox Game Pass, we expect that your game, or from PlayStation Plus, that your game will be downloaded Y or X amount of times, and one download is worth Y dollars, and then they calculate that. That's my guess. To me, at least, that would be the most sensible way, because then if a game gets downloaded insanely many times, it's not going to break bank for Sony or Microsoft. But then, actually getting into the whole price point, so I think also we are going to see in the upcoming generation, we're going to be seeing game prices go up. Because the AAA games price of $60 has stayed the same for the past 15 years or so. So we haven't seen the game prices go up in 15 years. So if we adjust to inflation, games are now cheaper than they were in like the 90s if adjusted for inflation. Because games in the 90s were like $70 or something new, adjusted for inflation. So we can already see this happening with Sony saying, you know, their next-gen games that are coming out are going to be priced at $70 instead of $60. And if a game is coming out on both, like Spider-Man is coming out on PS4 and PS5, the PS5 version is $10 more expensive. And I think this will become the norm. I think 2K has also said the same thing about their games that are coming out on both current gen and next gen. The next gen is going to be $10 more expensive. And I think Sony going this way and saying, hey, here is the new price point, $70 new, is going to set the norm. If it was just third parties trying this out, like 2K and Ubisoft or whatever, I would say like, it might not stick. But if it's Sony saying this is the new price point, I think it will stick. Part of the reason for that also is because this is also a way for Sony to message to their partners, other publishers that work with Sony, saying, hey, we think your games are worth this much as partners. So I think that is the new norm. And also, I've talked about this a few times already, but it bears mentioning that game sales are now shifting more towards digital. So at the current moment, for AAA publishers, I think most of them, their sales are either close to 50% or over 50% in digital. So digital sales are already overtaking physical sales of games. And for developers and publishers, this is a good thing, because when you have a $60 game and you sell it in the store for $60, the physical copy, the developer doesn't get $60, or the publisher doesn't get $60 and say, this is how much money we made from the game. They get around, I think, $20 to $25 per sold copy. And that's because you have to print the discs, you have to ship the discs to a storage where you keep them before you send them out to stores, and then you have to send them to the stores, and you have to also pay a cut of the sale to the store. So there's a lot of money that goes into these expenses, whereas with a digital game, the only expense that you have is the 30% cut that you give to Sony, Microsoft, Steam, PlayStation, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, Valve for Steam. So that's the only cut that you give, and then you get to keep the rest, which is way more than, it's almost double the amount than from a physical sale. So for publishers and developers, this means that their profit margins are going up significantly, and that is one of the main reasons why you see big companies in games reporting that their profits are going up. The big reason for that is because their digital sales are increasing while their physical sales are decreasing, so their profit margins are getting higher. But of course, for players, people playing games, there is a downside to this. So when you have a game digitally, you don't, in theory, own the game. You have a license for the game, and that license can be revoked at any time, in theory. So PT is a great example, actually. So PT, great game, but no longer available. If you don't have it downloaded on your PS4, there's no way of getting it, unless you buy a PS4 that has it on it. But there's no way to download it anymore. It's gone. Can't get it. And we're probably going to see more of these types of things happen in the future as we go more towards digital. A good example from last generation is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, which is a really nice beat-em-up published by Ubisoft. And it was on Xbox 360, but they pulled it out of the Xbox Live store at some point, and again, that's a game, if you didn't download it then, you can't download it anymore. It's gone. Even if you paid for it, it's just gone from the store. And most likely due to licensing reasons, because they had to license the property. But now it's getting re-released on current generation. But the problem is that it's getting re-released, but you don't get it for free. You have to buy it again if you want to play it. So this is kind of a thing that I don't think that will be a widespread issue, but I think it's something to keep in mind, that you might not be able to always. And of course, if you think 20 or 30 years into the future, like, are you going to be able to, keep all of those games that you bought for the PS5 when the PS7 or whatever the fuck is out? There will still be physical games in the next generation. It's just going to shrink as a proportion of sales. And I think in the next 5 or so years, we're going to see a shift more towards, if you want to get a game on day one, you're going to have to pre-order it, because there's going to be smaller batches of physical games. Whereas like in previous generations, like most games that got released, you could just go to the store and pick it up. But now I think you're gonna have to pre-order stuff if you want to get a day one, but then probably after a couple of weeks or a month, you can easily just walk into a store. So we're gonna see a shift more towards digital. It's gonna become more commonplace. Speaking of a shift to the digital side of things, we're gonna be seeing more subscription services like we talked about. So Microsoft has their Game Pass, Sony has their PS Plus, which are both very popular and have worked for them very well. Ubisoft has their own Uplay Plus. EA has their Origin, I forget what it's called, which is being rolled now into Xbox Game Pass. So I think this is going to become a more common thing because, you know, if a publisher could get you into a monthly subscription thing, that's great for them. That's like, it's a super good thing for publishers. And it can be a good thing for the people playing as well. Like Xbox Game Pass is really good. Uplay Plus, I don't think is worth the money. It's like $15 a month. Definitely not worth the money. For like, Ubisoft doesn't put new stuff in there, you know, as frequently as it should to make it worth the while. Whereas with Game Pass, you get new games, I think, like every week, and PS Plus every month. So, but I think we're going to see more of that stuff. Big publishers are going to try their own things, and I think they probably aren't going to work out that well. Like for EA had their Origin thing, but it looks like it didn't work out that well for them because they are rolling it now into Game Pass, which makes Game Pass even better. So I think it's more going to be like platform holders are going to have their own subscription services. So maybe Steam might have one eventually. I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? Hey, Kat, welcome to the stream. We're good. We're talking about the future of games and my opinion as a game developer. But yeah, I think we're going to move more towards this, especially with cloud gaming. Cloud gaming is a new, exciting frontier. So this means services where you don't need to have a console. You just need a web browser, essentially, and a controller. And then you plug it into your PC. You go to the web browser on a website, and then the game is played on a server somewhere. And then it just sends it to your PC. So we've seen Google have their try with Google Stadia, unsuccessfully, it looks like. But I think it suffered from a really odd pricing strategy where you had the subscription to the service, and then you also have to pay for games separately for each game, which is not a good system. Now Amazon is coming out with Amazon Luna, which is just a subscription service. I think it's $10 a month, I want to say. And yeah, you get $10 a month and you get access to all their games. Kind of a Netflix style thing, which makes way more sense for cloud gaming. But I think technology-wise, cloud gaming is still not quite there because big markets like the US, for example, have, in some places, even like big cities like LA, you have quite poor internet or unreliable internet, in big part due to their, you know, oligopoly system of internet access, or internet providers, I should say. So I don't think that in the next gen cloud gaming is going to become the big thing, but I think it is going to start growing slowly. You know, we have xCloud from Microsoft, and then I think Microsoft and Sony are working together on xCloud, which is an interesting change of things. We have Google Stadia, but they really need to turn things around for Google Stadia to become exciting. Amazon Luna, and Amazon definitely has the money and the knowledge and the servers to handle that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to start becoming a thing, but next gen, it's not going to become the main thing for next generation, but it will start growing slowly. Technically, it'll be interesting if the pendulum swings to there being like gaming subscription service packages like there are with cable TV. I just tried using web browser to play with GeForce Now, and it works. You have PS Now as well, but it's not that big. True, there's GeForce Now. So there is a few separate services now, and I think it's kind of the same thing as first there was Netflix, which became huge, and then everyone was like, we also want a piece of that pie. And then they split off, and now there's a lot of them. And I think we're going to have the same in games. Now, we're going to have a lot of different services. But I think it will become more popular because just the price point is insanely more accessible for a lot of people. Like, if you can pay 10 or 15 bucks a month, and you don't have to get anything extra for yourself, except maybe a controller, and you can play most games, then it's, for people playing, it is such an enticing option. But I think, the internet speed stuff and reliability of an internet connection outside of, like Europe, like we in the Nordics enjoy like insanely good internet and insanely good price, but many big areas, like big markets like the US, that is not the case. There is a bunch of different services. There's been a bunch of different services that have tried this, smaller companies, but I think the companies that can actually do this are the likes of Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, who have the tech and the money to do this, because this requires a lot of tech and money. It is very, very heavy. St. Germany, I guess PS5 and Xbox could be the last gen of consoles before cloud gaming will take over in some years from now. I don't think it's the last gen for consoles. This is actually funny because I think for the last 2 generations, we've been saying that this is the last generation for consoles at the start of the cycle. Like for PS3 and Xbox 360, they were saying like, this is the last generation for consoles. The next generation, no more consoles. And then that generation sold more than the previous generation. And then when this generation started with the PS5 and Xbox One, everyone was saying, last generation for consoles, it's done. And then the PS4 is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. The Switch is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. So I don't think that that's going to happen yet. I think it's going to take a few more generations before that shift happens. But I think it will happen, that we're going to move more towards cloud gaming. I think. But this is like super speculative, because this has to go into like, I think maybe like 10 to 20 years in the future. So no idea what the hell is going to happen then. But within the next 5 years, I think cloud gaming is going to grow, but I don't think it's going to grow into like a huge thing. I think it's just going to find a small place for itself. Yeah, Nintendo will keep doing their weird shit. Nintendo does Nintendo. I don't know what the fuck Nintendo's going to do. No one knows what the fuck Nintendo's going to do. They're just like, they're doing their own thing. They'll be into cloud gaming like 10 years after everyone has already gotten to it, so who knows. One thing I forgot is we're going to be seeing a consolidation of game studios in the future. That's what I wanted to talk about. So, Microsoft just purchased ZeniMax and all of their studios, and they've been buying a lot of studios within the last few years. And I think we are going to be seeing this a lot in the games industry in the future, because for first-party publishers, it is kind of better for them to own a studio and to buy it rather than to just have them publish games for them constantly. Because when you have a third-party publisher, developer that makes a game for you, let's say, Microsoft would get in touch with a studio and be like, hey, we're going to pay for your game development, but it's only going to be on Xbox, for example. And when they do that, all the knowledge and experience from making the game will stay with the third party. So if for some reason in the future they start making games for other people, Microsoft doesn't get to keep that knowledge and experience. So for Microsoft, in the long run, it's better to buy the studio, because then they get to keep that experience and knowledge to themselves. So I think we're going to see more of this. Although Sony's strategy hasn't really been to buy studios, Sony's strategy is more to open up studios and to develop that talent themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see. And Nintendo typically doesn't buy studios that much either. But I think it's going to happen more, and we're going to see consolidation. I mean, hey, that's also part of capitalism, right? Because in capitalism, when it develops, big companies start buying up small companies, and then you only have a few big companies in the end. That's the case with the media landscape in the US, where like 90% of the media companies are owned by like 5 or 6 companies. And I think inevitably our industry is also going to go in that direction because that's how capitalism works. Big companies want to control more of the market, and the easiest way to control the market is to buy out your competitors. I think that's also something that we're going to see more of in the coming years in the games industry. But yeah, in conclusion, I think we're going to be moving more towards digital. Game prices are going to go up. Sony is going to have a great start for this coming console generation. Microsoft will lag behind, but I think in the long run we'll have a great push with Game Pass. And streaming services are going to grow, but not become a huge thing yet. Yeah. The future is exciting, right? Hello there. Thanks a lot for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or you can come visit my stream on Twitch. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 PM Central European Time, and I can answer any questions there. We play games there, go through the news, and talk about some leftist politics as well. See you in the next video. Bye!